Not yet, Keith. Not yet.
Not yet.
Nope.
Not yet.
Okay. Let's throw the frisbee.
Quite the crowd.
Good evening, everyone. Would you please join us in a salute to the flag? Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pursuant to Section 5, Chapter 231, Public Laws 1975, this is to state for the record that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice of regular meetings on the bulletin board of the municipal building, by mailing the annual notice of regular meetings for 2018 to the News Record and Star Ledger in December 2017, and by filing said notice in the office of the Township Clerk.
Mr. Adams? Here. Mr. Daffis?
Here.
Mr. Lemberg? Mr. McGehee?
Here.
Mayor DeLuca.
Here.
Whereas Chapter 231, Public Laws 1975, commonly known as the Open Public Meetings Act, requires that all meetings of public entities be open to the public, and whereas Section 7 provides that the governing body has the discretion to permit, prohibit, or regulate the active participation of the public at any meeting, and whereas the governing body to comply with the provision in this act, same time to conduct its business in an orderly and expeditious manner, now therefore be resolved by the Township Committee, Township of Maplewood, does hereby prohibit, except as set forth in the formal agenda, active participation in the deliberations of the governing body by the public, and except as otherwise prescribed by law, does limit the public to the observations of the actions and discussions of the governing body at all of its regular and special meetings.
So moved.
Second. Ms. Adams?
Yes, I said.
Sorry. Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. McGehee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the November 7th meeting of the Maplewood Township Committee. I'm going to run through the agenda real quick because I know we have some very anxious Frisbee players here. They almost stormed the meeting here. We're going to do a proclamation on Ultimate Frisbee's 50th anniversary. Then we'll have our first public comment session. After that, we will have our Board of Health meeting, which we have every month. We have one ordinance on final passage, and that is to deal with partial payments of property tax. We have an ordinance on introduction dealing with licensing of all public pools. We have 4 discussion items listed: Community Volunteer Resource Program application form. Number 2 is Maplewood Village parking proposed changes. 3, a recommendation for 2019 and 20 jitney and parking fees. 4, 104 Baker Street redevelopment plan. We're going to add 2 more. One is the paving of Maplewood Avenue, and the second is a proposed reorganization of municipal departments. We have our consent agenda, which has a number of resolutions on it. We will receive, we're authorizing the receipt of bids for a new alcoholic beverage consumption license. We'll be extending a contract with a security firm. We'll be approving our revised spending plan for our affordable housing program, dealing with another resolution dealing with our affordable housing program in the event that there's a shortfall in funding. We're going to authorize the redemption of tax liens, adopt the best practice inventory, insert a line item of revenue in the budget, a reserve for architectural survey. We'll be approving some budget transfers, authorizing towing companies for 2019, approving bills and claims, allocating funds from the Open Space Trust Fund for a bike rack, and then approving the open and closed session meetings of October 16th, 2018. We'll have our second public comment period, administrative reports from elected officials, and then we will adjourn. At the conclusion of our public meeting, we will go back into closed for a personnel item and a contractual item. So with that, we are now set for the Ultimate Frisbee folks to come on up here. And I'm going to ask my colleagues to join me down there.
Absolutely.
Because there's so many Ultimate Frisbee folks, I need to have some balance here from the Township Committee. So come on up.
I like the beers.
Are you all just taking pictures? You're not coming up? You're not coming up? All right. Anyone else? All right, great. So we will do the proclamation, and then we will take a bunch of pictures. And we can also stage the pictures, make sure you get everybody in. So this is a proclamation for the Columbia High School Ultimate 50th anniversary. Whereas in 1968, Columbia High School student Joe Silver introduced to the student council the idea of Ultimate Frisbee, a game that combines elements of soccer, basketball, and football, and uses a flying disc instead of a ball. And whereas in 1969, the first game of Ultimate Frisbee was played at Columbia High School between the student council and the school newspaper staff using a Ramo Master Frisbee disc. And whereas in 1970, Columbia High School played the first interscholastic game between Milburn High School and beat them 43-10. And whereas in 1972, Rutgers played Princeton in the first college game of Ultimate, with Rutgers winning 29-27 on the 103rd anniversary and on the same site as the first intercollegiate football game. And whereas the Columbia High School varsity Frisbee team members acted as Johnny Appleseeds and introduced the sport to other high schools, their colleges, and local clubs. And whereas today there are an estimated 7 million Ultimate players worldwide and over 100 countries where Ultimate is actively played. And whereas the International Olympic Committee officially recognized the World Flying Disc Federation and Flying Disc Sports in 2013 and has talked of adding Ultimate to the Olympic Games. And whereas in November 22nd, 2018, there will be the annual Columbia High School Varsity Frisbee Team Alumni versus the varsity game on the same asphalt school parking lot where the sport was initially played. And whereas Ultimate's 50th anniversary will be celebrated in Maple Room, South Orange on November 23rd, 2018, at a dinner at the Woodland where current and former players will discuss the past, present, and future of Ultimate. Now be it resolved that I, Victor DeLuca, Mayor, on behalf of the Maplewood Township Committee, do hereby recognize the 50th anniversary of Ultimate and congratulate all those who created Ultimate and made it into a worldwide sport. And be it further resolved that I declare November 22nd and November 23rd as Ultimate Days in the Township of Maplewood. We have a representative who's going to speak?
Briefly.
Okay. Couple hours, right?
That's right. Thank you, everyone. It's a delight to have everyone here. I played in that Milburn versus Maplewood game all those years ago, and I've been at every one of the varsity alumni games since the first. I didn't play in one of them. I had an injured knee. It is wonderful that Maplewood has always been such a welcoming home to the game and sport of Ultimate. There are people all over the world who have made friends, who have kept fit, and who have had a tremendously wonderful time because of the warm welcome that Maplewood gave to Ultimate all those years ago. Any one of you who cares We will be playing all winter at the parking lot. Thursday nights start at 8. You're all welcome. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Township.
Let's do a picture. Let's get it over here.
Yeah.
We'll get the two seasoned guys in the middle here. Come on over here. We'll hold up our discs. Let's get some of you guys on this side. Come on over here. Right here in the middle. All right. There you go. You guys right here. We'll hold the here's the resolution. Let's get it back. Let's get it close. Make believe we're playing. Put the shove.
Not that kind of game.
Yeah, I know. I've been playing problems. All right. How we doing, okay? All right. Thanks very much. Yeah, come on, Tom, put us in there. So, we have one little quick announcement here. We were just told, go ahead, where are you? Go ahead, you're good.
For anyone that's interested, I'm going to be on an episode of Jeopardy on Friday night at 7 o'clock on ABC. So if you want to watch that.
Oh, man.
All right.
All right.
Yes, these are the real deal. These are the real deal. Yeah, these are the cheap ones. Yeah, these are sturdy.
This is not something you get at the bank, you know?
Too bad Russell's not here. That's awesome.
Okay, we are going to go back to our, the boring part of our agenda. Now we had all the fun. The first part is a public comment. Is there anyone who would like to come up to the microphone and address the Township Committee?
Good evening. My name is Dan Torrey. I live at 26 Clinton Avenue, 20-year resident of Maplewood. I'm here because I need your help. In the summer of 2014, the town conducted a series of sewer renovations on Clinton and many other streets on that side of, let's say, between Ridgewood and Wyoming. Tore up the street, and the town then did a fairly roughshod job of patching it up. That was 4.5 years ago. When are you going to pave my street?
So the question is, when we're going to pave your street, and the answer is we have to take a look at the schedule. It will not be this year. Are you talking about, no, I know where, are you talking about a full paving, or are there potholes or depression?
There are holes, moguls, speed bumps. It's like driving through downtown Beirut in 1982. It's pretty rough.
All right. So it's not on the schedule for this year. What we will do is we'll ask our administrator to work out with the engineer and the DPW to take a look at it and to figure out how to make short-term improvements. That's.
Generally, there's a, the engineer has a system of analyzing all the roads in town, and there's a whole number system associated with that as to the amount of traffic, the condition of the road, and all those things that go into what he ends up giving us at the end of in the budget process each year as the road program for the following year. So I don't know which roads are in for 2019. But we'll bring this to his attention very.
Could you just educate me? Because again, I've been here 20 years. I've unfortunately not been highly participatory in local economic, in local politics. I haven't been to a lot of these meetings. and I don't study the town budget every year, and I don't know as much as you all do about what goes into it. Roughly how many years in between any given street getting paved, given the fact that we do live in New Jersey? What's normal? How long has it been since your street was paved?
I don't remember last time my street was paved, and I've lived here 29 years. But the process generally is, depending on the condition of the road, whether or not there are improvements, whether to the sewer, which are a lot of clay pipes.
Right.
All those kinds of things. There's so many things that go into it. And so whether a road was just resurfaced or completely reconstructed, taken down to the bottom and everything replaced. We're also talking about how it's one of the items we're going to be talking about soon, is how we want to look at repaving our roads and extending the life of them possibly. But there's not a real simple answer to your question, but
Fair enough.
we count on our professional, our engineer, to analyze all the roads and do the process that he goes through in determining which roads are in the shape that needs to be, basically in pecking order of what needs to be done.
Thank you. So on behalf of the residents of my block, should I follow up with the engineer, with his office, with the
With
committee?
the administrator and
With the administrator.
right there.
Yeah, and she'll copy me. I'm Chair of Engineering and Public Works, so we'll bring this up too. We will be starting to talk about the road program as we enter the budget phase right now.
For next year.
For the year, yeah, for next year.
Okay.
Right now, there's a lot of capital projects. The money doesn't get approved for capital projects until July. That's why you're seeing a lot of construction right now in town.
Right.
Because all those planned road programs for 2018 are just now getting done.
Okay.
Because the money has to be in place.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for bringing it up.
Just so, also, just on the budget side, we put about $1 million a year into roads. We have a 20-year, it's somewhat dated, but we have a 20-year an analysis of 20 years of road repaving. I don't know where Clinton is. We can take a look at that. We don't get many roads done a year with $1 million, to be honest. Now, I will say that we got a bonus last year when the gas tax went up. Our allocation from the state went from about $250,000 to $600,000 a year. If that remains steady, we'll be able to do more roads.
Increase the program.
Yeah. So that $600,000, for example, is we're doing Boyden Avenue from the pool to the Irvington line. It just gets eaten up by not a lot of road length. So it's expensive what we do, but we'll take a look and we'll get back to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to address the Township Committee? And just give us your name and your address. You can pull that down.
Hi, so I'm Beth Jeffrey, and I live at 9 Maple Terrace. And I think this was a great segue for what I wanted to talk about. It's not the work that was done in 2014, but it has to do with sewage and drainage. I live next to an open culvert that floods, and I've been in Maplewood for going on 14 years. The culvert is on my neighbor's property. Her name, well, there's new neighbors now, but previously my neighbor's name was Lynette Robinson, and you recognize her and you probably remember this whole situation, right? Well, it's still happening. And for those who might not know, the culvert is open, and there's been sort of a discrepancy as to who is to be maintaining that. Is it the homeowner or the property owner, or is it the town? All of the rainwater from, the surrounding area really just drains rapidly right to this lowest point. And some of it is on that property, on the culvert, and some of it is actually behind on Mountain. 2 years ago, it was actually January of 16, the culvert actually was so filled with leaves and debris that it rained. It wasn't any of the unusual rainstorms. It had nothing to do with any superstorms or anything. It was a boring old rainstorm on a Sunday morning. And within 15 minutes, because of the blockage, all of the backyards flooded with water within 15 minutes. The fire department had to come and chop out, just to get the water to kind of move through. I came at that point and I had emailed everyone pictures of what happened and the firemen and everything. And, Lynette had said that the town she had an easement, and it was always the question of where that was. And, I feel like I'm talking about the same thing for years now, and now I have new neighbors, and I'm talking about it with them, and I believe that some of them may have been here last month talking about this, and my neighbor was supposed to join me tonight, but couldn't at the last minute. But just kind of like, where do we go from here? I do recall at the time when I came down, I was really concerned about property damage and who would have been responsible had that water, the massive amounts of water that pooled in 15 minutes, started getting into people's homes. Would that have been the homeowner's responsibility? And it just seemed to be so overwhelmingly unfair that this open water, there's pipes, you guys know this, there's pipes these big clay pipes that go from, they start, I don't know where they start, they go across Mountain Avenue, they're all covered, and then they get to, a certain point, and then they just sort of, it's just an open hole, and the water just kind of flows from there, and it flows through 2 backyards, and then it starts again at another old pipe. And it's dangerous, and we just kind of want to figure out once and for all, like, who's responsible for maintaining this, and what to do with it, because it's just been going on for a long time. So I'm just kind of curious, like, what our best next steps might be.
We dealt with Ms. Robinson for a long time.
Sure.
And and looked at deeds and looked at surveys and all that, and our attorney can, if I'm speaking out of turn or incorrectly, please let me know, but that is on her property, and we've determined it to be, whoever's the property owner is to be responsible for maintaining that culvert. But there's a deeper issue there, and it is that the amount of water flow, the pipes are just not large enough to suck all that water out. So there gets a backup. So we have asked our engineer to take a look at this and to come back to us with a range of options, none of which are going to be short-term and none of which are going to be cheap. We were to move forward with it. We're not even sure who put some of these. These were put in by the developers of the houses up there.
The pipes?
The culverts and some of the piping under the roads and stuff. Yeah.
Oh, I'm really,
Not the pipes not the pipes you were talking about. We put that in. But some of those in the early days when everything was built, those culverts and those swales were all put there.
Well, the pipe was replaced under the street on Maple Terrace in 2014.
Yeah, no, that was us.
That other stuff.
Yeah, that was us.
But it went all the way from one side of the street to the other, but it just left her piece right there.
Right, because that is her property.
But it was done on Mountain.
Yes, and
it was done on Mountain Street by you guys. The town did the one on Mountain.
Right. And
but why Mountain and not our street?
Well, we did it a couple engineers back, and we're trying to figure some of that out. It was part of a large project that we did with Milburn.
It was the same time period, wasn't it?
As what?
The 2014 pipes were replaced on Mountain on the homeowner's property, but were not done on Maple.
It depends if we had put the pipes in, easements, all that. So, it was a very convoluted decision-making process as to, we had to look at things, and there was a lot of stuff that went into it that determined who had easements, who had rights, who owned certain properties. So that's where it was. So we asked the engineer to look at all that stuff, because he's a new engineer. We're now
I know the old one.
Yeah, we're now back to, I think this was actually started before we had, Tom there, and I think Tom was on the job when he was in office when the job started. I think we started before him with another engineer. So we have this engineer we have now, Paul, is going to have to take a look at all that, and then report to us as to what we need to look at, what we need to consider. And then our attorney's going to have to weigh in because there's land use issues, land ownership issues, and who owns that. So we asked them to do that after your neighbors came last time. We asked them at our meeting, which we had shortly after that. We have another meeting coming up next week, I believe it is. And we'll see what he reports out, where he's at with that. And then we'll start having a conversation. It's not going to be an easy conversation because, as I said, this is a very expensive proposition, and we'll have to figure that out. And it impacts the adjoining community of Millburn too. And because it's how you move all this water has to be coordinated, and the state gets involved, and it's a very detailed operation.
But the water's moving now. I mean,
Yeah, but
it's not like it doesn't get diverted anywhere. It does flow through the
No, but
pipe and
if
under
you have
the
a
street and
storm.
into Millburn.
no, but when you have a storm, it gets be a problem. It can't move fast enough out of that area. So that's why you have your backup.
Right. Well, it also comes out of a pipe this wide and goes into an area this
That's
narrow.
exactly what the problem is.
Right.
And that is always filled with leaves.
And even if you took all the leaves out and maintained all the leaves out of there, and I think what you were correct when the fire department came and cleaned that out.
I was there.
But even if you had that done every week, you can't have water that's gushing out of a pipe this big, expecting to go into a pipe this big. And that's part of the problem.
Yes.
So we have to figure out all that, and that's what we're waiting to hear from our engineer.
Right, and it's fenced. The fence, I think there's a fence on the property, and there's a fence on Mountain between the two homes where the culvert actually is on Mountain, and the property that butts up to, I'll call it Mrs. Robinson's property.
Right, it's easy.
It's the same metal fence. It's the same wire fence. However, there's like a 5-foot. It's 5 feet, and the culvert travels between two pieces of property there and is fenced off. And the new neighbors have indicated that fence isn't even on their property diagrams and stuff like that. So, and I don't know, now I'm just kind of rambling, but anyway.
So
It seems to be an overwhelming responsibility for a homeowner to be responsible for the displacement of all of that water. It's just too much water for a homeowner to be managing on her own.
Right. And that's one of the things we're looking at.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the way it works is if we have property across the street and, we have the river running through Memorial Park, you go on the other side where the fire department is there, those homes there, all those property owners own that part of that river and are responsible for the riverbank. And we have other brooks in town where the property owner is responsible. So when we look at in the situation where you're talking about, we have to be aware of all these other responsibilities. And if we take responsibility for some private land, then why aren't we taking responsibility for all private land? And so that has to factor into our conversation about cost and about how to get things resolved.
Okay, so they're looking into it?
Yes. And as I said, it was prompted by a group of people who came last time.
Right.
Our engineering planning meeting actually is on the 22nd, so it's 2 weeks from now, right before.
Right, the day before
Oh, yeah, the
Thanksgiving. So
21st.
hopefully, our engineer has been working a lot on the paving of Maplewood Avenue and all that. We hope he'll have at least some sense of what's going on. Maybe our administrator can tip him off that this is going to come up.
Gotcha.
Did you want to say something, sir? You have to come up and give your name and address if you would.
It's okay. My name's Kai Moy. I reside in 10 Maple Terrace, and I thought I'd like to maybe help resolve this a little bit here. First of all, with regard to who's responsible, I think, and it's really good because on the township's website, there's actually 2 links with regard to stormwater management and the stormwater pollution prevention plan. Now, those two elements are part of a requirement of your municipal separate storm sewer system, the MS4 permit that you have, correct? So within that permit actually requires, well, first of all, and actually within the township's resolution number 13606, it approves the municipal stormwater management plan, and restates the goals that are stated in the regulations, specifically New Jersey Administrative Code 7.8. One of those goals, several of these goals, one, reduce flood damage, including damage to life and property. Assure that adequacy of existing and proposed culverts, bridges, and other in-stream structures. 3, maintain the integrity of stream channels for their biological function as well as for drainage. Now, the thing about that is that within the permit itself, if you look in the actual pages of your permit, it actually requires that the municipality develop, update, and implement a program to maintain these stormwater facility. That culvert is considered a stormwater facility by definition, which is also defined in the code, in your permit. So the thing is, moving forward, I don't think we need to, yes, there are engineering issues that has to be considered one way or the other, but as far as who's responsible, it's definitely the township's responsibility. And it is not a precedent either, because I believe in 2003, there was a court ruling in New Jersey that reaffirmed the theory of reasonable use rule. It was between Gorley versus Township Monroe. In this issue, it says that there, Mr. and Mrs. Gorley brought claims of nuisance and an inverse condemnation against the Township Monroe, Gloucester County, claiming that development, in this case, approved by the township on neighboring land, caused flooding on the Gorley's property. The plaintiffs also claimed that this resulted in taking of their property, for which the township must pay just compensation. In a way, I guess the way Mrs. Robinson's property was resolved in that way, and it's a good thing, because they could have been brought to a case, and I think she would have won regardless. So, but moving forward, I think it's important to understand that some of the things that needs to be done here are maintaining, or at least updating, what the town proposes to do in terms of maintenance, the actual stormwater management plan. I know in the link, the plan is basically a poster, which it's really not adequate, although later on your stormwater pollution prevention plan, there's a little bit more stuff in there, and it does address it. Just another note. There was a, last year's, I guess is an annual report that's to be filed in order for you to get this permit. One of the items in here is incidents of non-compliance. This is Maplewood. One of them is, your municipality is not ensuring the adequate long-term operation and maintenance of stormwater BMPs, best management practices, and it's not being performed on property that you do not own or operate. So that's what I like to put out to you. I can speak with this with some authority because I'm a retired environmental engineer for many years with a very large governmental agency, and I've dealt with this type of issue before, and where we have a private entity on our property, although they had their own permit for discharge, but there were issues because it's on our property, we would inspect. And when we find that they're not, or we fail to enforce their permit, the state comes after us, and we get sued, or we get issues of notice of violations, and so it's something that we should as a town, be aware of. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff that I think we're implementing because of the permit, and you've done a lot to put it in the permit, but in the websites and informing people what you should and shouldn't do, dog waste, leaf collection, and all that. That's great. That's part of the whole program. But in terms of what we need to do from an engineering standpoint or from best management practices, I mean, I believe our neighbors, I mean, I think I do as well. Like one of the things we would do is like right now, especially, leaves are collecting over this catch basins, for instance. Well, when it's raining, the water's flowing, it's going to be diverted. What we wind up doing is that we go out there with a rake and clear this catch basin and allow the water. Those are little things that you can inform neighbors that, hey, we're all in this together. Here's what you can do as a minimum. But other items like seeing if the stream itself is clear, that's clearly a permit responsibility that the township has to undertake.
Thank you. Could you do us a favor and give your contact information to Ms. Viveros? Anyone else want to address the Township Committee? Okay, we'll close the first public comment session. There'll be another one later on. We'll move into our monthly Board of Health meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Pursuant to Section 5, Chapter 231, Public Laws of 1975, this is to state, for the record, the adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice of regular meetings on the bulletin board of the municipal building, by mailing the annual notice of regular meetings for 2018 to the News Record and Star Ledger in December 2017, and filing said notice in the office of the Township Clerk.
Mr. Adams? Mr. Daffis?
Here.
Mr. Lembrick? Mayor DeLuca?
Here.
Mr. McGehee?
Here.
Whereas Chapter 231, Public Laws of 1975, commonly known as the Open Public Meetings Act, requires that all meetings of public bodies be open to the public, and whereas Section 7 provides that the Board of Health has the discretion to permit, prohibit, or regulate the active participation of the public in any meeting, and whereas desire the Maplewood Board of Health to comply with the provision of this act, at the same time conduct its business in an orderly and expeditious manner, now therefore be resolved by the Maplewood Board of Health, Township of Maplewood does hereby prohibit, except as set forth in the formal agenda, active participation in the deliberations of the Board of Health by the public, except as otherwise prescribed by law, does limit the public to the observation of the actions and discussions of the Board of Health at all its regular and special meetings.
So move.
Second.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. McGehee?
Yes. I will now entertain a motion for the approval of the minutes.
So move. Second.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. McGehee?
Yes. Mr. Rowe.
I have several items I'd just like to talk about. The first one is, it's nothing we haven't heard before, but just the fantastically high number of opioid deaths in this country and in the state. I was reading about it as I was preparing the report, and I was just, you know, I'd heard it all before, but, you know, it kind of comes to a point where it hits you upside the head, and you're just like, holy smokes, this is really bad. I have a report, 2 graphs from the Center for Disease Control in the report, which I hope you looked at. We're going to increase our anti-drug abuse education activities. We're going to be working with the ADAPT group, who recently got a federal grant, and they're going to make Maplewood, South Orange one of their priority areas. So we're hoping to increase educational and alternative activities, particularly aimed at youth, to help them live a lifestyle where they'll decide not to do drugs. That's the emphasis that our particular group does. There's also, I want to look into more treatment areas for people who do become addicted. Just today I was looking on the website, and there are no opioid treatment places in either Maplewood or South Orange. There may be some individual physicians, but there's no larger practices. So I want to work on that too, because I would think it'd be really good to have something more local. St. Barnabas has programs, there are many other programs in the county, but not in our two towns. I also added a report about childhood lead poisoning. It's Childhood Lead Poisoning Prevention Month is October. And I've reported before the action levels lowered to 5 micrograms. So what that means in terms of number of cases, what we now call cases for action levels, have increased by 5 to 10. So we would have 1 or 2 cases a year. Now we're going to have 5 to 10 cases a year. And East Orange Health Department is our enforcement agent and medical management, and they've been doing a great job. So I just wanted to make note of that. Professor Jan Kaminsky has agreed to serve on the St. Barnabas Community Health Advisory Committee. And I'm also going to have our nurse health educator, Candace Davenport. We were given a second invitation for a person to be on that committee. So I've asked her to serve on that. And this is, I think she'll be doing an excellent job. This is exactly what her training in public health is. Tomorrow, Horizon Blue Cross is coming to the town hall. It's a recent connection we made with them, and they're coming to do cholesterol and glucose screening tomorrow from 10 to noon here at the town hall. Anyone who still needs a flu shot can go to contact Dr. Grover at 2168 Milburn Avenue, or they can call us and we'll help them connect. We gave Dr. Grover, the vaccine that we didn't use, with the understanding that she would take town employees and other people who miss the flu clinics. What often happens is people miss the initial flu clinics, and then a month later the flu starts hitting and they want to rush out and get a flu shot. So we made sure we had a supply for that.
Mr. Rowe, how many shots did we administer?
We administered here at the town hall 149 shots. 139 shots, excuse me. It's less than we've done a decade ago, but the difference is now there's lots of more players giving flu shots. Doctors' offices, pharmacies, companies. CVS. So from a public health point of view, it's a good thing because more people are getting flu shots, and that's what our goal really is. We're not the only game in town anymore.
And for the public's knowledge, you can go to CVS with your health insurance card and it's covered as a flu shot, correct? Or Walgreens,
Correct.
whatever.
That's correct. And Walgreens too.
Yeah.
So thank them for doing that service. They also give some other adult vaccinations like shingles and I think pneumonia shots. So if you don't want to, if you can't get it at your own doctor, that's a good place to go. We just recently purchased a carbon monoxide meter. It's the same one that the fire department bought a few months ago. And they're just about an inch square box. And the first day the fire department inspector had it, he went to do a routine inspection at a food business. And they had just recently installed a gas burner that made steam, boiled water to make steam for their cooking, for the product they cooked. And the burner wasn't functioning properly, and they didn't have the exhaust on. And the carbon monoxide level was very high. And in fact, the person standing there said they had a headache and felt sleepy. So those are the 2 warning signs for carbon monoxide poisoning. So to my way of thinking, that inspector saved a life. And so thank goodness for that. And so we're going to add that to our repertoire of equipment we use when we inspect, because we're in basements, restaurants, all sorts of places. So particularly as the heating season starts, if somebody's got a clogged chimney and they don't know it, this may help detect that. And finally, tomorrow at 8 at the library, they're having a program on Medicare, understanding Medicare. So I know it's called Navigating the Maze of Medicare at 7 p.m. at the library. So I know I'm going to that because I have trouble figuring this stuff out, and I'm going to need it soon. So I would encourage anyone from the public to go to that meeting who's in the category of trying to figure out the Medicare system. That's my report.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. I have a question for you. Do you have authorization over the Columbia High School bathrooms?
Yes.
Okay, it has become knowledgeable to me that they are in unsanitary conditions.
Mhm.
I'd love for you to go and take a look at them and, if possible, write up the school district.
Okay, I'll contact
It
the
is.
maintenance person and we'll go to everyone.
Yeah, it is my understanding the middle school, the lower schools, and the high school. And the school district needs to handle that immediately. If there's no toilet paper in the bathrooms, if stalls don't have doors, that is a violation.
Right.
I'd like to see that addressed as soon as possible.
Okay, we will do that.
Thank you, Mr. Rowe.
Okay, thank you.
I'd now like to provide the public the opportunity to address the Board of Health. Would anyone like to address the Board of Health about any sanitary issues in high school bathrooms?
Mr. McGehee, we do have a member of our Youth Advisory Committee who
Yeah,
has brought a few of these
maybe
issues to our attention recently.
Yeah, so maybe she'd like to come and
And
address the Board
if
of Health
she is still awake, we'd love to hear from her.
about the conditions of the high school bathrooms.
So no pressure, board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some other issues that we talked about working with the Department of Health with.
Thank you.
Please. Excuse me?
Said parking?
No, Department of Health with. Department of
Board
Health.
of Health.
Okay, but, okay. Hi, I'm part of the Youth Advisory Committee and also a student at Columbia High School. And Frank brought up the bathrooms, and I can attest that they are quite disgusting. Toilet paper is a major issue. Stalls, there's like full bathrooms where the stalls don't work. Like the door was like moved out of place and it like doesn't close or lock, which is kind of unfortunate. Oftentimes we don't have soap. Also sinks don't work either. Like it's either only hot water or they don't work at all. And I don't know, just in general, there's some like leaks sometimes and there's just like unknown liquid places. So definitely please consider taking a look at it because I know every student at Columbia definitely can agree that the bathrooms are not in good condition. So, yeah.
And I believe there was some interest in working with Mr. Rowe in some sexual health awareness. Is that right?
Yes. Senior Health has a really good, Miss Cahill, who is one of the senior health teachers this year, did really good implementing like domestic abuse and just like healthy relationships and STD, safe sex into the curriculum. But previous years, like underclassmen, they aren't offered that in depth of like as inclusive of a curriculum in health. So definitely I feel like there's certain things that I learned this year that I should have known in past years. So it's kind of more like paying closer attention to the underclassmen's health classes. So, yeah.
In the high school and in the middle school.
Yeah,
is what we're
definitely in the
saying.
middle school too. Mm-hmm.
So we'll connect offline. And is there anything you want to say, Mr. Rowe?
I don't think I can have the jurisdiction to tell a high school what to teach, but we can certainly advocate for it and give them resources and numbers if they're curious about that, and at the middle school. We've gotten this request once before, and I know we were trying to work out the details.
Right. And that's the idea, creating awareness like we do with addiction prevention and other things, not necessarily instituting new curriculum.
Right. But maybe we could work with the hub and the loft something like that.
Great.
Strikes
Mr. Rowe,
me
yeah,
as-
if you can follow up on the fact that there's no soap and toilet paper in the bathroom.
Yes.
That's a deep concern of mine with the school district is failing our kids.
Understood.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the Board of Health? All right, seeing no one, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. McGehee?
Yes.
Okay, we're moving back to the main agenda. We're on item number 8. We have an ordinance on final passage.
Mr. Mayor, item number 8 is an ordinance on final passage, ordinance 2931. An ordinance amending Chapter 248 of the Code of the Township of Maplewood entitled Taxation. This ordinance will permit partial municipal property tax payments in advance of the due date, subject to limitations.
This ordinance has been published, copies posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public in accordance with the law. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this ordinance, which deals with partial payments of property taxes? I bet you we had an ordinance that said you don't have to pay your property taxes. There'd be a line here in favor.
Right.
So, seeing no one, will close the public hearing, and Mr. McGehee, can we get a motion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move this ordinance be adopted as a whole and the clerk be directed to publish the same as a past ordinance in the South Orange Maplewood News Record according to law.
Second, yes, sorry.
Please call the, is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Ms. Adams? Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. McGehee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Just give me a second. Ms. Adams, on this last ordinance, would you vote so we can have your record? This,
Would you vote?
would you vote? This is
On
the
the-
ordinance for the partial tax payment.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, I'll vote, and yes, I vote yes.
Number 9, we have an introduction of a new ordinance.
Yes.
No.
Wait.
Oh, yes,
Go ahead.
that other, yes.
Item 9, introduction of new ordinance 2932-18, an ordinance requiring licensing of public recreational bathing facility as required by New Jersey Administrative Code 826. This ordinance will require the licensing of all public recreational bathing facilities within the Township of Maplewood.
Mayor,
Daffis.
Mayor, I move the passage of this ordinance on first reading, its publication according to law in the Maplewood South Orange News Record, and a hearing to be held on November 20th, 2018.
Yes. Oh, second.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. McGehee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes, thank you. We're going to move to our discussion items. The first one, Mr. McGehee, the Community Volunteer Resource Program.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a continuing conversation about the ability for our residents to volunteer, potentially volunteer for committees, I was just doing a due diligence on our process and noticed that there was discrepancies when filings paperwork online versus offline. I thought it was important to bring that to everyone's attention as we were looking to have consistency in the information so that we decide if a resident should be eligible or chosen for a committee, that all the information provided would be there and attainable. Since our conversation, I know that Ms. Fritzen has looked at the situation and has advised the committee of a couple of things. One, that one of the committees I was missing, which was the Green Team, which was the catalyst of this process, has now been added to the selection process. And also there's been an ability for us as all of us as Township Committee members to now acquire the information from an online medium perspective. So with that, I think we've addressed that issue, but it was initially put on the agenda just to make sure that we addressed it. So I'm okay at this point.
Anybody have anything else? Nothing. Thank you. Number 2, Mr. Daffis, the Maplewood Village parking proposed changes.
Thank you, Mayor. And if it's deja vu on this discussion item, it is, because we talked about this last time, and it became apparent that I miscommunicated and caused some confusion. So I'm reintroducing the proposed changes, times, and names. As previously indicated, we have been working with a marketing firm to help us market better our free underutilized parking in the village, with a traffic consultant to help us realize how to better manage our traffic in the village. And of course, the Maplewood Village Alliance Board has a subcommittee for parking to discuss how we can lessen the issue that we have with parking, especially during the day, during peak lunch hours when parking is difficult to find. And these are short-term solutions, not long-term solutions, and only a part of the pie here. So what has been recommended is an effort to increase, to have better wayfinding, to streamline our parking rules on the street and in designated parking lots, to change the names from parking lot numbers that we have now, that no one seems to really know where that parking area is when we say parking lot number 7 or parking lot number 2. And to sort of have some sort of consistency about our rules on street parking and designated parking lot parking. So the recommendations are that on-street parking stay at 2-hour parking, Monday through Saturday, except Sundays, from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. That would be a change from the previous limit, 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. The committee felt, and all of our consultants felt, that there wasn't really a difference between 6 and 7, and this would, again, create an opportunity for cars to move around and better manage our parking spaces, because we have to keep in mind here that in the evening hours, you could park wherever you want for as long as you want. It's a free-for-all. So parking, on-street parking from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., Monday through Saturday, except Sunday. And in the designated lots, the recommendation was, what we currently have is we have 2-hour parking in certain lots, we have 3-hour parking in one area of a lot, and then we have 4-hour parking. 4-hour parking is a long time. It really ties out the parking space. It's been highly recommended by all the consultants that we consider either having 2- and 3-hour parking or making all parking at 2 hours. Where we came down in the committee in terms of something that would be equitable is to have all parking at 2 hours in the lots that are closest to the village, and 3-hour parking in lots that are further away and require folks to walk. This gives them an opportunity to have dinner or lunch rather, and catch a movie and still make it back to their parking spot without any issues. So how does that break down? That means that, and the last thing was we would change the names of the parking lots from parking numbers to parking lots. So, so what we're recommending is that we take the Rickleton lot, which is the lot closest to the train station across the street from the movie theater, and call that the Rickleton lot, parking there from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., Monday through Saturday, except Sunday. The lot that is closest to Village Coffee, behind the Claris, and going all the way parallel to all the businesses there, Arturo's and the other businesses, that would be called the Village Center lot. It is currently broken up into 2 different lots, and the parking there would also be 2 hours Monday through Saturday, except Sundays from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Just one clarification there. The section behind the Claris would be part of the Rickleton.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, sir.
Well, those few parking spots by the dumpster is what you're saying?
Yes, those would be considered.
That would be
part of
the Reckleton, right?
The other would be the Village Center.
Right. Beyond there down to Baker Street would be the Village Central lot. Right, exactly. Thank you for the clarification there. Easier to visualize these things. We should have had a map then to talk about them clearly. And one of the major recommendations here is to combine the Highland Street lot and the Woodland lot into one lot, call it the Woodland lot. It certainly works as one single lot currently. They're not separated, they're connected. And what we've decided there, or what's recommended, what we potentially could decide this evening, is that that would be, let me get there, 3-hour parking from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. except Sunday. And again, that's a little bit more of a distance from, our Main Street, Maplewood Avenue, and provide an alternative to 2-hour parking, giving people a little bit more time. The Baker Street lot on Baker Street behind Words would be called the Baker Street lot. Their parking would be 2 hours from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. So you sort of get the idea, right? And then we have a question. Let's stop there and see how everybody feels about that, if there are any questions or concerns.
Just to remind us, all the parking now is going to end, the time limit is going to end at 6. We currently have the time limiting in there at 7.
At 7, right.
So it's recommended. So the on-street parking, the parking lots, they're all going to be uniform, ending at 6,
right,
starting at 9 a.m.
Right.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. So there were a couple questions with 2 specific streets. Beach Place South, where we currently have 3-hour commuter parking, where we have commuter parking from 8 a.m., from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. And the question is whether or not we should keep that or open it up to 2-hour parking.
Mr. Davis, if I just may, there are conflicting sections in the code. There is one section that has time limit parking and one section that has commuter parking. So I think the issue is which of the 2 options does the committee want to deal with? Whether you want to keep it commuter parking, in which case we will just delete the time limit parking, or if you want to have it time limit parking, then we would have to delete the commuter parking. Is that right, Mr. Davis? I think that's what the issue is.
That's right.
So my recommendation is to delete the commuter parking. And the reason being is that from Beach Street to Jefferson on Woodland on that side is commuter parking.
Right.
So, and taking the commuter parking off of Beach, anyone displaced could park on Woodland right around the corner. And that then can open up some time limited parking. And also we might be able to do an overlay of merchant parking and create some more merchant parking there.
Mm-hmm.
So I would remove the commuter parking because I think in the overall, it's not a loss of commuter parking.
Right.
In that particular area.
Right.
This is Beach Place, between Woodland and Maplewood Avenue?
No, the other way. Woodland
to a point.
And
To
Woodland, and then there's
going west for a few feet.
backyard of another home.
Yeah.
Okay, that dead end,
It's
basically.
a dead end, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Then from Beach down to Jefferson is commuter parking on that same side of the street, which is the west side.
Is that the consensus?
I think so.
Yes.
Okay.
Fine with that.
So then, if you would just look at page 2 of the draft ordinance.
Could you speak into the mic?
I'm sorry. If you just look at page 2 of the draft ordinance, so what we want, and unfortunately we left out a time limit. So this should say Beach Place South, 3 hours, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. all except Sunday. Woodland Road to a point 420 feet west thereof, correct?
Well, right now, the permit is both sides of Beach, and we want to have time limit on both. The permit parking is on both sides, the north side and the south side of Beach.
Okay, but before we get to what we want to delete, let's, this section.
No, I'm not suggesting we're deleting. You have Beach Place South. All I'm saying is Beach Place should be all.
Okay.
Or both, I don't know
We
what
want
you're using.
both. 3 hours, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., all except Sunday, from Woodland Road to a point 420 feet west thereof.
Right.
That we have on Woodland, 3 hours, yes.
3 hours.
Yes.
Okay? So that's 3 hours, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., all except Sunday. Okay. And then we want to eliminate commuter parking.
We want to eliminate it's under 257-61 schedule permit parking.
Right.
Each place, both, that would be eliminated.
Okay? So that has to be added. Okay. I got it. And there was one other one, right? Mr.
Highland.
I believe there was, what was the other one?
Highland.
Highland.
Just on the same page, a little further down.
Right, and the issue there was that, the same issue as Beach Place, that there is commuter parking from Everett Place going to Ridgewood on the
North side,
north side of the street.
right?
Yes.
So again, there's contradictory sections in the code. So the issue is, do you want that to be commuter parking or time limit parking?
No, on Highland. So this is above Everett.
So what do we have on the south side above Everett?
From Ridgewood Road to Everett Place.
We were going to delete from Ridgewood Road to Everett. Right now, okay, we have time limit parking and commuter parking. So that's why we were going to delete.
Oh, that's right. Okay, on the
Yeah.
north side, we go
Right.
all the way from Maplewood to
Right.
Everett, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Okay.
So you have commuter parking on one side. I think you have commuter parking on both sides right now.
Right.
I think you have from Ridgewood to Everett on the south side, and from Ridgewood to Maplewood.
Merchant overlay there, I thought there was.
There is, what I have in the
On Highland?
permit is Island North is 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. for commuter parking,
From where to where?
from Everett to Ridgewood.
Right, but there also is a code section that has it as time limit parking. And that's,
No, actually not, because
hang on a second,
this says Maplewood to Everett on the north.
hang on one second.
Right.
Highland North, Maplewood to Everett, right?
Is 2 hour
2
parking.
hour, right, it's two.
And then the permit is from Everett to Ridgewood.
Right.
Right,
So
on-
we're
on
gonna
the north
change that-
side.
So we're gonna change that to 2 hour, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m.
No,
You don't want to change
no,
it.
no, you're missing it. Highland runs from Maplewood Avenue, on the north side, it runs from Maplewood Avenue to Ridgewood.
Yep, got it.
We cut it in half for some reason at Everett on the north side. On the lower portion of Highland, we have 2 hour parking.
Right.
On the upper portion of Highland on the north, we have
Permit,
commuter parking.
6 to 10. Yeah.
Okay, so we need to eliminate the north side 2 hour parking from Maplewood Avenue. No, I'm sorry.
No, we need to expand the north side parking from Maplewood Avenue to Ridgewood.
You want to make this to go all the way to Ridgewood.
Right, so
Right.
we're getting rid of the.
And we're
commuter
getting rid of
parking.
I would get rid of the commuter parking
Yes.
there. I don't think we should have commuter
Right.
parking in that downtown area.
I agree. And that would all be 2 hours
It'll be 2 hours the way we're talking
on the
here.
north side.
Merchant overlay.
With the merchant, yeah.
Right, right. That doesn't change. Yeah.
And on the south side, I would not delete it. We have deleted there?
Well, we have from Ridgewood to Everett,
That's the south side.
the south side, because this is a conflict, because that's commuter parking there, I believe.
It does not, according to well, if it does, it's missigned because according to the schedule I have,
It's 2 hours.
it's 2 hours. Now, admittedly, this
So
could
then
be
we
an
want it, so we want to eliminate the deleted
correct.
and just keep it 2 hours, 9 AM to 6 PM,
Right.
all except Sunday.
Right. So all of Highland will be 2 hours, right?
Yes.
Both sides, and no commuter parking on
Right,
Highland.
because below Everett, there's no parking.
Correct.
On that, on the south
Correct,
side.
on that
right?
side, right.
Yeah.
No
This is-
legal parking.
this is
Of course,
all
there's
very
loading, but
confusing.
there's no legal parking.
It's very confusing, yeah.
Okay.
Okay?
And I think those were the only issues. And recommendations thus far.
And I think what we were talking about is now that we have this standardized, it not only will have different names, but it'll have colors.
Right.
So the Rickleton lot will have one color, and the
Right.
Civic Square lot, Baker lot, Woodland, and.
Right.
that can
We're
also
doing
be-
a whole new map of our parking. And it'll be color coded accordingly once we agree on these new rules. So I guess if we're all in agreement, I motion that Mr. Desiderio prepare, he has already prepared a draft ordinance amending section 257-53, schedule 17 of chapter 257, which governs time limit parking.
Will do. I'll just.
Everybody in
Second.
agreement? A second? Everybody in agreement on that?
Yeah.
Okay.
You keep mentioning wayfinding. Is the Village Alliance doing a wayfinding program?
Well, they're first doing a sign audit
Okay.
to see where we have signs that we don't.
Right.
And they are working with the marketing firm, Danny Garacci's marketing firm, to see what we can do, what they recommend. And we haven't received a final report on that. It hasn't gone to the board yet to make any decisions.
Okay,
But there was a recommendation for better wayfinding in the village all around.
but that, yeah. That's something they're thinking of funding?
We haven't gone that
Gotten
far
there
yet.
yet.
Yeah.
Perhaps they could, because they can bond as a SID, so
Right.
fund it themselves.
I would just make one suggestion. When this is passed and signed, you're going to have people who, maybe commuters who are parking
Yes.
on some of these streets, so you might want to give them some kind of warning that.
Yeah, no, I think operationally, you're absolutely right. There
Yeah.
should be some kind of grace period.
Where they,
Yeah, similar to what we do with the permits at the beginning of the year.
okay.
Do we have the information, emails of everyone who has gotten a permit? Do we have the email addresses of everyone who's issued a permit?
Commuter permit.
I don't know that we have the email of everybody, but we certainly have their name and address.
Okay, so we should send a letter to them.
Well, we,
I would have to
if
go
I
to all
can just
community.
clarify that, we send a letter with information out to tell them that, for example, the 2019 permits will be available on this date.
Okay.
Everybody gets a letter. They could certainly get included in it, this notification as well.
This
Would-
one
yeah,
won't
we're-
take effect
So that's
before
not a problem.
2019?
It most likely won't take effect before
this point.
2019.
Right.
So that
So
would
it could
work.
be part of the letter,
Yeah.
it could be a notice that's part of that mailing that says,
That's
That makes
Beach,
sense.
Beach is no longer commuter parking and Highland is no longer commuter
Yeah,
parking.
and that's no problem. I mean, actually, we have most, if not all, of the labels ready to go because we know we do this every year.
Right.
And we're going to be reaching 1,000 people. So it's easy.
perfect.
Can we, part of our communication thing, can we select with permit applications, email addresses as well, so we don't?
Well, I
So
mean,
when-
that's a great idea. We've started doing that with like the 24-hour Woodland because we've had to notify the Woodland parkers, 24-hour
Right.
parkers that we're having Oyster Fest and things like that. So we've started to get email. I don't see why we can't on the application
Yeah,
have
just
them give us their
required
email.
field for
So
sure.
that's fine. We'll be happy to do that.
And next up is recommendation for 200,019-2020 jitney and parking fee.
Yeah, Mayor, thank you for, Mayor compiled some information from our last Engineering Public Works meeting, and I printed out all my notes and my comments and additional recommendation number 5, or a change to recommendation number 4, and left it on my desk when I came from work today, so that was helpful. But I'll try to, as long as my memory will help me here. Basically, engineering, public works, and planning, we've been discussing jitney fees. That's the jitney is run by Public Works, and we talk about that in connection with the operations of the jitneys. The Township subsidizes the cost of the jitneys. In the past, it's been 35 to 40% of jitney expenses that are conveyed to the users through user fees and jitney fares. We're recommending that be increased to that the users of the jitneys, the fees increase over the next couple of years so that the users cover 50% of the cost, and then the general budget, X dollars, covers the other 50% of jitney operations. And that's because, well, I think we all understand the jitney program has been a benefit to all residents of Maplewood, in that it's a benefit that people understand when they come looking for a house and they commute to the city, that they have this extra added amenity. The other part of this issue, and that sort of goes to number 4, is our commuter parking permits. And we didn't talk a whole lot about the parking permits at the meeting, although I think it's something we need to look into more. The recommendations here are for very modest increases. When you break out how much it costs for a commuter to park in Maplewood, it's less than $1 a day right now. Neighboring towns are much more, which is part of the notes that I left on my desk. Other towns are $4 a day. Thank you. Summit is $4 a day. South Orange is a lot more each day, depending on which lot. $2.80 a day, or $5 a day, or and so on and so forth. And other towns are the same. So competitively speaking, we're a bargain basement commuter parking town. And those fees are important in revenue for operating our budget. And so we have a few recommendations. Everybody got what?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Is to try to get this done over, not to do a huge increase, but on the jitney pass. So the recommendation number 1 is to do 50% of jitney expenses, the other 50% of jitney operations by general revenues, and estimated that 2019 jitney operation will total more than $300,000, including fuel insurance, salaries, repairs, debt payments. Recommendation 2 is the jitney pass be 50% of the parking permit. Number 3 is laid out as a jitney pass being $125 from the current $100 per year in 2019, and $150 for the jitney pass permit for 2020. And then Vic laid out some numbers here. The parking permit, I would like to recommend that right now in 2018, it's $2 or $225 for an annual parking permit, which is really, really low, I think. So we have a recommendation here to go up only by $25 to $250, which still breaks out to just barely $1 a day, and $300 in 2020. I'd propose that we increase this even more to $300 in 2019 and $350. And I know that's not, I feel like we did mostly a jitney and parking combo discussion, and we didn't really focus too heavily on the parking permits at our meeting, and you guys were all there. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I would like the commuter parking permits to come in line with, they'd still be the cheapest in the area, even if we raise it to $300 a year. Most are $300 a quarter or $400 a quarter, and this is just.
What would you recommend then for 2019 for the parking?
I would rather it go up to $300 for the year, and then I'm open for discussion, but I'd go up to $400 for the year, the following year, which is a lot, I know, in a sudden increase.
Right.
It's also something that's been undercharged for a long time.
Right. So the idea here, and these numbers reflect the following, I thought, but that's why we're discussing this, that we are currently at a 35 to 40% recapture, and we'd like to go to a 50%, right?
Yes.
And so that translates, and I remember in our conversation in subcommittee, the idea was to do so over the course of 2 years, right? Which was our business administrator's recommendation, which I think is a great so it's not jolting. And so these numbers reflect that, right? So when we talk about the parking permit going from 225 to 250 for 19 and then 300 to 2020, is that right? Is that what that?
That's what this is, but that's just parking permit, and I'm not sure. There's a little bit of cross thinking here, because right now we're talking about having the jitney fees amount to 50%. It didn't really, and then we have the joint, you know what I mean? So the parking permit is something completely separate from in logic wise.
Sure.
We're not using that to pay for the jitney 50%. So I don't personally think we should be tied to lesser increase for the parking permits. I think we need to come in, and we're still less than $2 a day. If it was, say there's 250 work days in a year, and $2 a day would be 500. We're not even close to that.
So you can't adopt recommendation number 2 and do what you're saying, because recommendation number 2 says that the jitney pass is going to be 50% of the parking permit.
Right.
So if the parking permit goes to 300, then the jitney pass has to go to 150.
Right.
Or you have to eliminate recommendation number 2 and just make them 2 standalones without any relationship to one another, which I think I would not agree with. I think what we tried to do is to show that you pay a parking pass and we have this jitney and you get it for 50%, and that's the incentive to ride the jitney.
Correct. It's still, I'm not even coming close to saying that if we take out recommendation number 2, we can still do what we're doing, go to 100, 125, 150, which would be even less if we raise the parking permits accordingly. Right? So that's my proposal, is to go from 225 to 300 and then from 300 to 400 over the course of the next couple of years. That's an annual fee, so that's still less than $2 a day to park.
So in addition to that point that we are at fair market value across our communities, another narrative is the increase would be allocated to enhancing our services. As you know, in the last couple of weeks, we've been short on drivers. We've had issues, and I think if we're able to tell the public that we're going to use this money allocated to get backup, reliable drivers so we can drive jitneys and not little vans, and I think this would be more palatable for our residents.
And to that,
But I don't think you can do that. I mean, I don't think the jitney fee has any relationship to whether we have drivers or not.
But we need to pay our drivers more, right, so they're more reliable. I mean,
Well, I don't think that has anything to do here.
Right.
That doesn't represent paying more, paying less. This just deals with the standard operating. If it costs over $300,000 to run the jitney, and if you want to bring in 50%, you got to bring in about 100. We're working to bring in 150.
Irrespective of the quality of the service.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think
because the quality of service is the argument the residents are gonna have. You're charging me more, and I'm getting crappy service.
And I don't think it would be accurate to tell them that we're going to solve the jitney problem of drivers by doing this. I think there's other ways of solving it that we need to explore internally, but
that's my concern. I feel like it's hard to justify the increase even under fair market value when we just haven't been providing the service our residents deserve.
so 250 work days, $100 or 125. It's like 50 cents to ride the jitney.
Yeah, I understand. But as I commute, I don't use a jitney, but I hear it. And there's a lot of F-bombs and other stuff happening when they've already waited 2 hours for the New Jersey Transit and then the jitney's not there, or the jitney is just left. And so, it needs an overhaul. And so I just think that's part of the narrative, regardless if this is a direct correlation or not.
Right.
Yeah.
But, this is a discussion about fees.
Right.
So, are we ready to move forward here? It sounds like we need more
Yeah, we need
discussion.
discussion about the parking permit fees, and then then you'd have to figure out the combo one if we raise them more. We're hurting ourselves and struggling all the time, not raising taxes and the user fees. So I think we need to seriously consider raising the parking permit.
Right. Well, the parking, I think, is a different situation because you're parking and walking to the train, right?
Right.
That's a different, because I think that, that's, I think in terms of some of the lots we have in town, I think that's why we have a lot of speeders coming from Millburn and Short Hills, because it's cheaper and they're
Exactly.
flying into our town.
No, this is
So-
not for that. It says nothing, this is.
Well, I
only
thought we were
internal.
on the parking fees for.
These are
No, this is
resident
nothing, this is the
commuter
resident
residents.
parking. Okay, then
These are residents.
then I apologize.
Yeah, that's not, has nothing to do with
All right, well, I apologize. But then in terms of the parking fees themselves, then I know they are low as well as fair market value. I don't know, I have a concern. I want us to obviously make an increase to a certain extent, but I have a concern with, we have a lot of other expenses coming on board, with a potential capital plan for our schools and things. And I think if you think about it, if we're nickel and diming everything in our town, I think it gets a little exhaustive. This would say.
Right, but we're not. We're just looking at this as an issue that is an issue. We're drastically undercharging for parking permits, and then we're not meeting our costs. We want improvements to the roads. We want to manage our system better. We want to do striping and put all the stuff, including enforcement of commuter permit spaces and all that goes with engineering and planning and paving and everything. So, and this is part of the road use. I think we're undercharging for the commuters to park to go to work. And this would mean we go to $300 next year and $400 the following year. There's still less than $2 a day for a parking permit.
So, my recommendation is that we go back in committee, in planning, engineering committee, and talk about this as it relates specifically to the parking permit. Because our discussion was really, as you said earlier, focused on how do we go from 35 to 40% of expenses to about half. Right? And how do we do that over a 2-year period and what those numbers look like? But we didn't really discuss this other thing. And so maybe we need to, and it would be nice at that meeting to be presented with the information that you have, the research that you've done from other surrounding towns.
Mr. Desiderio?
You're gonna have a logistical problem.
Yes.
Because we gotta introduce at the
Yes.
next meeting and then pass it at the second.
We've got to decide tonight, because we've got to authorize Mr.
Right.
Desiderio to to prepare it.
Otherwise, you're gonna lose 2019.
Yeah, because we have to, we also have to send
She's gonna be
stuff out,
selling
so.
permits.
So can I make a proposal that we do recommendation number 3, that the mayor laid out? And get to, over the next 2 years, 50% of our needed revenue for jitneys. Then to, on a separate thing, change recommendation number 4 to, which increases the parking permit over the next couple of years to do the same thing, only a little bit higher.
Why don't you take them as separate?
I am.
So your proposal, if we have agreement to move forward on number 3, right? I'm in favor of that.
Yeah, I'm in favor with number 3. And we've thoroughly discussed that, number 1 and 2. And
Help state.
All right, so I'm drafting an ordinance to say that for 2019, it's gonna be 125, and for 2020, it's gonna be 150. And the cash fee will be $2 a ticket. Okay, that I got.
So recommendation number 4, Adams, you want to let's put some numbers out.
Currently, the parking permit for an entire year is $225. Supposing we raise that, instead of only $25, we raise it $75 to $300 a year for 2019. And I'd go either $375 or $400 for 2020. That, like I said, amounts to.
So can I make a friendly recommendation? We're increasing the jitney fee by $25. But if we increase the parking fee by $50, and then we increase it by another $50, so it takes it from $225 to $275, 275 to 325.
I'd go with 275 and then 350 and 12.
I'm more in line with your recommendation. With your own recommendation? Yeah, okay.
Hear my argument. My narrative's a little bit different here. I'm thinking about the residents and the experience and
Right, and I'm thinking about all the residents who aren't commuters and who are subsidizing the commuters' expenses for commuting. Nobody's subsidizing my commuting costs. Park in town and I don't take the jitney.
Okay, so this is the
I'm
thing.
saying I'm not alone in that as a resident.
yeah, I mean, I don't do either.
We have a fixed cost to run stuff and then we need to pay for that.
So, because we have to set the fee for 2019 and we're here in the end of November, in November, and we do have we have a meeting on the 20th,
Right.
Yes.
right? So we can introduce on the 20th, but we have to give, you do your mailing on before then, right, or around then?
Well, you'd be all right on schedule if you introduced on November 20th and then had final on December 4th, I think it is.
4th, yeah.
We usually have the first late night, just ringing a bell. It's in the neighborhood of somewhere between the 8th and 10th. We do a late night sale. But yes, we do send the information out to tell you, about the late night sale.
Waiting to do the second
In December,
meeting at the December 18th meeting would be way too
that would
late.
be rough.
So we need to ascertain if there's 3 votes that are going to be 3 votes on November 20th and 3 votes on December 4th. Right now, you're in the minority. Does that mean you're not going to vote if we do 3,
I'm in the minority for what?
275 and
75 and
325?
325. We have 3 votes.
No,
I'm
he's not going to
clear.
vote for any of it.
Oh, okay.
So it would
Well,
be the 3 of us.
Do we have to do 2020 now?
No,
No.
No.
which is what I was
So why
going
don't we
to
just
suggest.
do 2019? We're all in agreement with 275. And we can have that discussion for
Right. We
2020.
also don't have to do 2020 in
In the
recommendation
budget.
number 3. So we
Yeah.
can just do 2019.
We'll just raise it for, and then our mindset is
Yeah,
clearly that
frankly,
we're
we've,
going to raise it again the following year.
You've never done 2, usually you do
I know,
1 year at
we
a
were
time.
trying to do 2 years because we were trying to get to a percentage.
I
So
understand.
why don't we just say 2019, the jitney fee is going to go from 100 to 125, and the parking fee is going to go from 225 to 275.
And the combo,
Combo is going to should go from 250 to 300.
the combo on
300.
2019 to 300?
I'm more comfortable with what's on here.
With which
What's
part?
on?
225 to 250, 250 to 275 on the parking permit
We were
number
doing,
4.
you just agreed a minute ago with 225 to 275.
Wait,
Mayor's recommendation.
that was your recommendation or your recommendation?
Oh.
I have so many
Is it
numbers
gonna
here.
change?
It was my
what you
recommendation. It
support?
was my recommendation.
No, I didn't mean it like that.
It
You're-
was his.
It was my compromise recommendation.
Wait, so we have 225, 250, 225, 250 right now. And you were saying you wanted to
25 to 300, but I could be comfortable with 275. And
Okay.
Vic, Mayor did 275, and you,
okay, all right. I will do 275 then.
And since that's a $50, I was just making the combo $50.
Got it. Okay.
Right.
I'm good with that.
Got it, Mr. Desideri?
I think so. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is the 104 Baker. So we got the redevelopment plan. Economic Development Committee went over it, made recommendations. It's been changed based on those recommendations. We're ready to put it out present it to the public. We have a meeting scheduled, schedule a meeting for November 19th. And we just want to get everybody's agreement to release it and schedule the meeting.
Yes.
yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, paving Maplewood Avenue. So, we've been met with some challenges, on paving Maplewood Avenue. It will take a day, a full day a full 12-hour day to do all the milling. And there's a lot of concern about closing roads in sections or partial closings to do the milling, and then partial closings another couple days to do the paving. So what we're suggesting is to do the milling starting Sunday evening at 8 p.m. and go to Monday morning 8 a.m.
All right.
At an additional cost of $18,000. This would allow the road to be open in the morning on Monday morning, and then we can focus on closing it based on the weather to do the paving, which will take a couple days.
Right.
But the milling operation is quite bulky because they're going to be using these two large milling machines, and it would be much better if we could do it in the evening. We can do it even if it's raining, whether it's day or night, and get it done. And then we would have a clear surface. People could ride on it Monday. If the weather's good Tuesday, we can start the paving and get it over with.
Right. And the concern that we heard from from merchants in particular was the loss of their parking spaces during the day. They absolutely could not, there would be no parking, which also impacts their receiving deliveries. And it is the week before Thanksgiving.
The paving cannot be done at night because of the weather. It's getting too cold at night for paving, and the asphalt will not be warm enough to be applied. So that can be done in the daytime. The milling can be done at night. So that's the compromise we'd like to get everybody to agree to. But, you know, our accommodating one group is going to upset another group.
You got residents,
Yeah.
Right.
and it's really noisy.
It is really noisy. You have not only the scraping that occurs, but you have a lot of the beeping of the backups. There's a lot of trucks. There are going to be 10 trucks being used to load the asphalt on. You know, about a third of the area will be done before midnight, and actually without a lot of, and would be done without a lot of traffic to interfere, without a lot of closing of streets.
Yeah.
We could close streets then, the police could be deployed,
Right.
or in a different way, and it would make life a lot easier.
Right.
So I think we should do it. I think we should just bite the bullet and do it. The merchants are very concerned about having that many days closed. I think it's a legitimate concern. So.
I do too. I've been very close to this, as you know, Mayor, talking to the merchants daily about the construction and kind of walking them through. And they've been swallowing a lot during this process. And of course, we're all doing this together for the benefit of the town. And of course, this would not be a good thing for our residents overnight. It would be very noisy, but as the mayor said, let's bite the bullet and get it done so that we don't inconvenience the entire business district the entire week. Also, the other consideration here is the fact that the weather conditions will be a little bit tricky next week. On Tuesday and Wednesday, we expect rain, possibly even a light snow. If we can get the milling done quickly before Monday morning, that gives us a little bit of lead time to do the paving if we have to not be able to work for 2 days. Because remember, we have a hard stop of November 16th. We can't possibly extend the construction beyond that date. So that's another part of this whole calculation.
Yes.
Okay,
What is the alternative?
do it in the daytime.
Or do
6
it
a.m.
after the I mean, how
We
much of
can't,
it?
we can't do it because the asphalt stops.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about if the road is drivable now.
It's questionable. We
Well,
don't know
I
if it's
know.
going to last another winter.
I'm pretty sure it would. I'm just saying, I don't know I haven't been privy to this conversation, so I'm asking questions I would ask if someone called me about it. So the alternative is to patch potholes or whatever and make it, and wait and to do the paving until after the holidays or in the spring. Well, no, it depends on the weather, because we've had 70-degree days.
No, we agreed per the contract at this phase that there's a hard stop on the 16th,
No, I know.
and we
but
would start up again in April.
Right, but the hard stop is construction. The hard stop doesn't necessarily mean you brush the paving or you do the paving. It just means that you're not doing anything after the 16th. Question to me is whether or not we do the milling and paving, or we do the milling and paving later, or we take this $18,000 change.
And I don't know the answer to this question, but a concern with that concept is you've let a contract out, okay, and I don't know that that price is guaranteed, okay, beyond a certain period of time, because the contract might.
I don't know what it is either.
Right, it might only be based on asphalt prices through a certain date, so if you were to postpone it, you may be subject to price increases. I don't know, I'm just suggesting that may be.
Maplewood Avenue is part of the road program. It's a unified contract with certain dates. All the paving's supposed to be done at a certain time.
Right, that's why I'm just throwing it out as another
All right, I'm just
consideration.
asking the question because I didn't know the
Right.
answer. So I guess I'm fine with that. I'm really concerned about the residents down there, though.
Okay.
One night,
Okay.
this night, but. Very quickly, yep. Well, there's a draft that we're working on, yep.
Next up is the reorganization plan. So we have had the benefit of receiving some proposals from Ms. Viveros, and I'm going to ask her to speak on the plan. We got a package tonight that had some additional pieces to it, and so why don't you take it away?
Okay. Mayor, Township Committee, thank you. What you have in front of you is essentially what there's a where we are in terms of the table or organization. So it's broken down into 12 different departments. Essentially, what I would be doing is consolidating some of these departments. I mean, organically, they are doing this, but I think we need a lot more of a better management in terms of some of these departments when we consolidate them. So for instance, the 3 new combined departments would be finance, and that would have tax collection and tax assessment. Community services, which would entail of the recreation division, cultural affairs division, welfare division, senior services division, and health division. So that's broken down into 5 different departments, 5 different divisions. And then we have community development, which would hold the building and zoning division and code and enforcement division. All 3 of these would have a director position that would oversee the operations and would report directly to me. Do you have any questions in terms of exactly?
So you right now have 12 direct reports. Under this, you'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Appreciate it. I'm sorry.
You'd go from 12 direct reports to 9?
Correct.
What is the benefit of consolidating the finance? How does it work? The CFO would be responsible for all these folks. How would the staff be deployed?
Correct. Finance, currently right now, we just have the CFO, offices and operations, and the tax collection part of it. Tax assessor is treated separately, which in my experience should actually come over to the finance side. Currently, the staff that we have is a deputy tax assessor and a tax assessor that is part-time. I feel we could use the position of a full-time tax assessor, and that would suffice. We do have the clerical assistants on the finance side, both with 2, let's call them administrative clerks. So there's quite a bit of help there. So it just, the 2 offices are next to each other. It would just really be a natural flow of the operations. Right now, there's not a lot of oversight, I would say, on the tax assessment side in terms of a department head. So I think we need that a lot to happen more.
And you're saying that the administrative staff in the finance would be able to work in all these different areas? There'd be some kind of cross-training or
Correct,
capacities so that they could do all these different things?
correct. Mostly administrative work, nothing of
Right. Yeah,
detail.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then the community services, the real difference is because already the community service, well, recreation, cultural affairs, and senior services are already together, right?
They're already together.
So this is bringing in the welfare person as part of that, and also health division. So this is our health department would become a health division.
Correct. And like I said, much of the services that we offer, both within the welfare division and the health division, to reach the different demographics, they're already doing that. And I think it would just be a natural flow to have the community services department treated, and whether there's recreational activities that deal with the senior services, it just happens, like I said, organically, where each division could work with each other, and it's something that they're doing now. But I think we need somebody to oversee how and what we can do in order to sort of make those flow a little better. In terms of offices, they're already next to each other. So overall, in this plan, I'm not changing any office assignments, placements, anything of that nature. Everybody maintains their role. In terms of that, I think the affected employees would be these director positions and anyone at the division supervisory level.
So with this, there's no change in headcount in community service division?
No.
In community development, building, zoning, code enforcement, what's your thinking there?
With regard to building and code, maintaining the same level of staff there, same titles, except the building official and zoning officer would not now be a department head, would be a supervisory role, but still effectively supervise everyone that's underneath him, which is the technical assistant, some administrative clerks there, and any inspector position that's there. As far as code enforcement, everything's going to be maintained the same. But I think on a macro level, you need a director to overlook these operations and see how they're going to sort of flow together. Right now, I don't think it's doing that. We need some sort of mediation oversight on these two different departments, these two different divisions of it.
Right. Are you?
Right, no, I'm done. I just wanted to lay out, make sure we all understood
Right.
what your thinking was.
I want to follow up on building and code because I'm pretty familiar with those two. I work with those two. Okay, so what I thought you were doing doesn't sound like you are doing. So you say in your memo that the current building official zoning officer would maintain their title. Their current title is department head?
Title, no. Their official capacity is building official.
Okay.
Construction official.
But would no longer be a department head?
Correct.
Okay. That position would now be a division manager,
Correct.
only of building and zoning.
Correct.
Right. So we're sort of naturally separating a little bit that division from code
From
enforcement.
code, correct.
Right. And then code enforcement, who is going to be the manager of code enforcement?
The current supervisor that's there, the building,
The inspecting
yes, the
supervisor.
Code enforcement supervisor.
Okay. That makes sense.
There's somebody in this role as community development head?
We currently have a community relations director who works heavily with.
Director of Community Development.
Director of community, right.
Yeah.
So who is that?
What I'm saying is the current role, the current employee who holds the title of director of community relations.
Community Development.
No,
it's Director of Community Development.
Oh, I see, okay.
Okay. Okay, that person would
It's Annette.
I know, I
DeBruff.
get it.
Yeah,
Okay.
Annette.
We can say her name.
All right,
We
yeah,
erased her.
we erased
yeah, we
her.
just want to make sure.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Annette would hold the title of, community
So
development
code enforcement and
director.
building, construction code official, they would report to Annette.
Correct.
There would be some synergy, and also that office would be the office that relates to the SIDS, so that we have some synergy between
Right.
building, zoning, code enforcement, and the SIDS, and when they have their meetings, they may bring in SIDS and.
Right.
things
Which is
like
what
that.
we're hoping to do.
Right, which is currently something she's doing now with the communications part of it, and, her grant writing and some of the commercial and residential things that are happening. Really, she can get that information from the construction official, and as well as code enforcement people. What are some of the issues that we're dealing with currently,
Right.
So,
Okay, so no one's losing their job. We're just kind of,
no one is losing their job.
okay, just want to make that clear.
In the community
In this-
development.
Right,
Right.
right.
Let's just be careful in how we say things, yeah. Community development area.
Community development area.
Well, we also say in your memo, on the recreation side, I recommend promoting one of the program supervisors to position of recreation manager, this person, blah, blah, blah. The other program supervisor will remain with the same responsibilities and duties.
Right.
So there's two now, and there'll still be two,
There's-
except one will be the manager.
Correct.
And the community service director will be our current recreation director,
Correct.
Ms. Mancuso.
Yes.
Can you walk me through these numbers, Tom? I'm a little confused.
Well,
I'm trying to follow these numbers here. I see.
What
I
numbers
added
are
up
those?
the numbers. That's what I've been
Oh.
sitting looking at.
Oh, right.
So I'm looking at whatever. I see a net down here. I can talk about the numbers, right? So I see 45, 45, 91, and then proposed I see 108, 45, which is 153. So that gain of basically 60. I mean, that's a net, right? I mean, trying to understand how these numbers add up.
Well, I can't omit the prosecutor position itself, whether she would hold that position or not. That number stays, because you still have to have a prosecutor.
Now, she would have additional duties of quite a bit of supervision that she doesn't have now. And I know that she's very busy being both prosecutor and director of community development already, so
And
So those were,
I just don't. yeah.
$53,000 more responsibility.
No,
Okay, 'cause I'm-
she's
I'm
getting
adding-
$91,000.
Right
Right,
now,
but she'll be
currently,
getting
but the way this is
153.
lined up, and you add it this way, you add 108 plus 45 is 153.
She's not remaining as prosecutor. This is not,
Okay, because that's how it
This
works.
is not, well,
this is not, this is not the way we had discussed it, you and I, right? She's not remaining as prosecutor.
no, we would anticipate there would be a transition period, let's just say.
So we would,
But the numbers are real, because I can't omit a
I
position
understand the
that,
numbers are real, but, so what we're asking is she
She's-
going to,
She's not going to get salaries for both positions.
because that's.
Okay.
She's not going to get the 108 plus the 45.
Yeah,
That's
the
what
way
it
this
looks
is-
like
the way
there.
this-
It
the way
does
it's
look
written
like
is
that.
she is.
It's-
So
yes,
being an
you're right.
accountant-
You're correct.
Yeah.
You're correct.
So,
I was looking at
I
the
mean,
same.
there was a couple of parentheses around the 45, so.
Right.
Thank you for that clarification.
So,
And nothing's in place here, because if we were, just to go back to the CFO, if we were to deal with the tax assessor's office and make it a full-time position, we would open it up to see who's interested in the full-time position.
correct,
So there's no automatic decision yet. We'd have to, in fairness, we have to see who's willing to do it and make it work that way. So, and that's probably because the other two don't have really employment displacement.
Right.
They're a little easier. I think the finance one, we have to really drill down a little bit and make sure that what we're moving into satisfies our needs. Because our cost for our salary cost for the finance is about $113,000. I'm sorry, for the tax assessor is about $113,000, $115,000. So we got to make sure that if whatever change we make there, we're able to do what we have to do, and that's defend tax appeals and make sure we're properly assessing.
Absolutely.
And so that's going to take a little more drilling down to make sure we have the capacity before we make any changes there.
Although I would think that a full-time tax assessor is
Yeah, the question I think is,
without two people doing,
right, but can you get a full-time tax assessor with the quality you're talking about for the amount of money that we're suggesting here? That's, I think, is the issue.
Right.
And we don't know that. I think that's what one of the, that's a very good question. We have to factor that in to see, to get some data as to what other towns are paying for a full-time tax assessor. We're kind of like slipping into these numbers based on current people.
need more data.
And we need, yeah, for that.
Yeah.
I think the direction we're going in, certainly, it makes sense to me to consolidate the management of the finance office under the chief finance officer.
Correct.
That makes sense.
Yes.
And I think the community service, I've sat here for years at budget meetings and asked the recreation department, how are you reaching out to 564 Irvington Avenue seniors? And then the health department comes out and I ask the same question, and they're not talking to one another.
Sure.
And then we have individuals who need assistance, and we have a welfare person, and do we even know if they're talking to one another? Is our senior citizen coordinator having regular conversations with the welfare person?
Right.
I don't think that stuff happens.
Right.
So I think this synergy here, I think, is going to make a lot of sense and move that.
I agree with that. I mean, I even think about even our committees, we have a recreation department, we have a recreation and human services, it's like, and we need to kind of look at that too. So I agree with that.
Yeah,
I was
I
just
agree with
wondering
that.
about how the numbers work financially.
I think we have to go back and look at those numbers again a little bit, because I think the issue of the prosecutor, that's going to be some negotiation. I mean, part of the problem, there's a lot of stuff spinning with certain people right now.
Yes, there is.
Right.
So, but I think in the overall, what you've laid out, I guess what you want from us is whether you should continue to work on this or not. And then, well, actually, if we
Well,
should,
I'd like to start this in January.
so we have to start moving on
So I'd
this.
like to move on it in terms of starting to think about the consolidating of these departments and structuring it that way. So then we can change some of these roles in ordinance before the end of the year.
So on the community service, are we okay with moving forward on that? Because that means talking to certain people and
Yeah.
lining them up and making the appointments and stuff like that.
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Yeah, that one I'm comfortable
Okay.
with. Yeah.
Okay. On the community development, each town has to have a construction official, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so the construction official will still remain as the construction official?
Yes.
And will have certain responsibilities under state law for
Correct.
building, and will supervise all the construction inspections, the plumbing,
Yes.
electrical, all that. So that person will continue to focus on the building and be the
And the zoning part of it.
division director of that, and work on, so when a new building goes up, that person's going to focus on that.
Correct.
When plans come in from the planning board or the zoning board, that person's going to look at the plans. He or she's going to sign off on that. Well, it's a he right now, he's going to sign off on that and all that. So that's not going to change, correct?
Correct.
What's going to change is the relationship between that work on the building inspections and the code compliance there with the property maintenance. I know we call this code enforcement, but there's it's a little
Well,
mix up in the
it's also
word.
changing the responsibilities of the construction code official.
Correct,
By no longer being a department head.
correct.
And
I
we also need
right.
to think about
Compensation.
compensation.
Correct,
Because that was a certain level because of the responsibility of supervision, which will now be.
Right, and I think that you're aware of that and you're prepared to have that conversation, I believe, right?
Correct.
But I think that makes sense in terms of what we see as our work right now, our workload.
Yes.
Oftentimes, we can't do both things. We can't do all that zoning and those inspections on that end, and property and commercial maintenance, code enforcement. at the same time.
And also be the point of contact for somebody who might want to come here either to buy a building or to build something. We want to make sure that that is all connected and that we have a real clear path as to how to, help that person get through the hurdles or the doors that have to get done, so.
I think one of the feedbacks I've gotten from residents was that coming into an office, and not to say our staff, they're very knowledgeable and helpful to the residents that come to the counter, but I think if we start to create this sort of brochure or packet of information for residents who want to come and do the renovations that they do, it's good to have somebody at the top to sort of see that and how we could sort of implement those welcoming packets to people, if you will.
Well, I think you're also sort of changing the framework from going to building and code enforcement to going to community development. So you're talking about a little differently. You're talking about, it's a little different than, it's just a little different mindset, because it's not just coming in and finding out about, can I open this on it's this business on Irvington Avenue. It's, can I open this business on Irvington Avenue? And we'd like to capture your information. We'd like to do a follow-up with you. We'd like to find out how to, what we can do other things. Have you, looked at this or looked at that?
And that is important because that's exactly what we want to do, I think.
Correct.
Yes.
Is this thinking about this from that sphere, that lens, community development, because we always talk about, well, how can we do this better in order to not destroy the character of our neighborhood or of our town, How do we strike that balance? So I think that's the right way to describe it.
So what are we thinking on that level? I like what you've proposed. And I think, we heard some things that have to get worked out, because there are going to be a little shifting of responsibilities, and there has to be a relationship to compensation and all that, so.
Will there also be changes in offices and such?
There are no changes to any offices.
Okay.
Everyone's
where, like I said, just everyone's really naturally where they are and shouldn't.
I think this really helps in a lot of ways of helping people communicate better.
Yes.
I mean, this is about efficiency in government services, which is better delivery of government services. This is what our residents want.
Agreed.
And oftentimes we have, in the short period of time that I've been serving, my biggest frustration has been the silos, where we're working on the same thing for different people and we're not communicating with each other. So this is great.
I think I guess the direction that I'd like from you is to sort of feedback, yes, go ahead, forth, because I want to also sit down with all of these individuals and talk to them about exactly how anything would change, if any, more or less how everyone would flow with one another. So I want to have those open conversations with employees.
Right. I think we need talk about what's happening. Are we going to advertise a tax assessor, full-time tax assessor, or are we going to be?
Can we?
Well, it's not a department head position, so you wouldn't necessarily.
Probably the finance person.
The finance committee could do it.
But we do need to figure that out. So we need not only find out what other, full-time assessors make, or is a tax assessor, for example, a tax assessor in South Orange is full-time, but she's also purchasing agent, both. You know what I'm saying? So there might be different ways to make it work, but yeah.
So if we can move on, we've already agreed to move on community services. Do we have agreement to move on to community development?
Yeah, I'm all right with that.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And I hear you on the
And then
delineation
I think we need
of-
to go back on the finance, and maybe what we can do is kick that around a little bit more in the finance committee through the information we share, and then we can come back and share that information with we can get that information prepared and present it to the full township committee and see what we want to do with this.
That's
Yeah,
fine.
because in reality, our tax collector's there for another year from South Orange, right?
Right.
Okay, so we have to do something there, and it's going to certainly come up in the budget, and we've got to be prepared if we're going to move it. Maybe there's a portion of the year we do it, maybe there's the whole year. I don't know, and I think we need to get some guidance from Mr. Desiderio on tax appeal deadlines and all that, and make sure we're covered, because, we had our budget meeting with the assessor today, and there's an expectation we might have a little higher number of tax appeals next year, because we're getting further away from the revaluation. Get further away, particularly on the commercial side. So we don't want to have to go through a transition right in the middle of tax appeal season.
Boy.
Right.
Yeah.
So this might be something that we phase in starting in July. So let's agree to the concept of certainly a single manager on the finance side.
Right, so, yes.
But let's figure how to make that tax assessor work for us and for the office over there.
So I guess my question to you is, in terms of the finance, I guess from a management standpoint, would you all be okay with at least moving the tax assessor's office to the finance?
Under the supervision of it?
Under the
Yes.
supervision of the finance?
Yes.
Aside from,
Yes.
aside from any personnel changes?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
that's, all right.
Yes. And of course, the tax assessor has a responsibility, Mr. Desiderio has a responsibility to the state tax office?
Absolutely.
Right, but there's still local supervision.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's local supervision, but yeah, in terms of the functioning of the duty, the technical aspect, that's covered by the state and by the county tax board.
Right, so whether the person's a standalone office or works for the CFO, we can't tell that person that they can't do certain things that are required by statute.
Can't tell them how to assess a property, can't tell them to reduce the assessment, can't do any of the technical aspect.
But we could tell the person they have to work from 10 to 6, or they have to be here on Tuesday and Thursday night, or something like that.
Yes,
That's within our purview.
yes.
Good to know. Thank you. Oh, and then we'll also need the proposed salary adjustments too, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think it's unfortunate that this got a little confusing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, okay. Is this good enough for you, what information you need to know?
It's good enough for me to move forward, so I'll work with you on some ordinance.
Okay. Let us move to the consent agenda. We get a motion on the consent agenda?
Second.
Any discussion? I just want to say one thing on item number 6, the best practice inventory.
Yep.
This is the highest score we've ever gotten.
Yeah.
Great.
And in my meeting with, we found another way we can increase it, right? In our budget meeting with engineering, public works, there was something, what was it we were talking about, in the CFO said that could be something else. I forget. He'll remember. But in other words, we might have an even better score
Great.
based on.
It's already at 94.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes, thank you. We have our second public comment. Is there anyone who'd like to make a comment to the Township Committee? Yes.
How are you? I'm Len Mandola, construction official and director of the building department. I heard what Sonia proposed in reference to my position. On November 1st, Sonia told me that it would not affect my salary or my position as the construction official. So I just heard someone said that they're going to make salary adjustments, which I wasn't told that.
Well, you have a current salary and you have a future salary, right?
Yes.
No, I don't think anyone's talking about your current salary.
Oh, okay. Okay, I didn't realize that. I thought you were lowering the salary. Okay. I think that.
No, we're not gonna lower your salary right now.
Well, I do work well within that, so I would have no problem working within that. Her and we have meetings together with code enforcement anyway, so I wouldn't have any issues with that. I thought that you were lowering my salary, so I wasn't sure.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes.
Ed Galanti, tax assessor, Township of Maplewood, 24 years. I guess a little surprised that we want to change the position to full-time. I've been here on a part-time basis for 24 years. I come here on Wednesday nights, but that doesn't mean that that's the only time I do work here. I actually consult with the town attorney on tax appeals and other issues on a daily basis. I work nights, weekends, at home, here in the field, to get the job done. The job has been gotten done for 24 years, so I don't understand why you think you need a full-time person when I have taken care of everything that needs to be done professionally and with no issues from the county tax board or the division of taxation, all very pleased with my performance. And I've been getting it done for you at a very limited cost to the town. So, you know, I'd like to maybe meet with you to discuss how to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish without, like you mentioned, Vic, affecting the quality of the work and, you know, making sure that everything goes smoothly and so you can accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. I don't really understand where this is coming from because there's been no issues as far as I'm concerned. I had a review recently. There was nothing wrong with it. County Tax Board is very pleased with my work for the last 24 years. I'm always prepared. I think you should consult with them, see how they feel about it. I don't know what you're going to accomplish by getting a full-time person other than it's going to cost more money. And that person is not going to be able to do the job I'm doing, not right away anyway. My plan was to retire in 2020. I'd still like to do that. I will give you my notice tonight, but let me work with the deputy that's there now so that he can take over the position and continue to do the good job that's been being done for the last 24 years. And if he needs help, because he'll now have extra burden, we can deal with that later. That's the way I feel anyway.
So this is not an evaluation of you, number one. Number two, I think if you heard part of what I said, you heard all of what I said, I guess, that we're going to have more conversation about this to make sure that we have a functioning office. And that will require some meetings with you.
Oh, that'd be good. Thank you.
Anyone else?
My name is Wayne Kroll. My office is at 12 Northway, Maplewood. I would like to compliment the building department in the town of Maplewood, and as well as the property maintenance division. A little history about myself. I was the fire chief to 2005 in this community. I was privileged and honored to work under Mayor Vic DeLuca as fire chief. Since then, I've been an investor, a builder, and a developer. A few years back, before I was semi-retired, I was probably one of the largest taxpayers in Maplewood before Avalon and some of your big name builders came in. Over the years, I've come in front of the Board of Adjustment and the Planning Board dozens of times. I had built over 100 units in Maplewood. A few years ago with the property maintenance, I had owned and managed probably 40 or 50 apartments. In the last few years, I've purchased and renovated the Maplewood Diner, East Side Fitness on Springfield Avenue, as well as right now I'm developing Newark Way. I have nothing but good things to say about the building department and code enforcement. I have not been met with any type of resistance. In fact, under Lenny Mandola, and by the way, for the record, I didn't know Lenny Mandola before he came here. I knew his dad. His dad was on the Board of Appeals for the fire department, and his father was a building inspector in Roseland. Lenny Mandola shares the same traits and characteristics of his dad. I have never, ever have found somebody that could be more fair or more helpful to a builder or developer without giving away the store. I do not think anybody should mistake his kindness for weakness, because I've seen both sides of Lenny, and if he thinks somebody is trying to do the wrong thing for Maplewood, they will be met with the force as they should be. However, I have had many times that I've had to call the building department, weekly, and I've received a phone call from him, no matter how busy he was, within 24 hours. That's not the same reception I'm met with throughout New Jersey as I continue to build in other municipalities. Also, in other words, whenever I need help, I've been met with somebody who would research for me codes, anything I asked, and that was to try to make the project move smoothly. So I know he's busy and I know everything, but you always hear complaints. I just wanted to let you know tonight that your building department and your code enforcement, in fact, if anything with code enforcement, my only complaint is that they're too much. Between the fire department, which I was instrumental in, and the code enforcement, the inspections, and they're on top of their game like you can't believe. They really care. So again, you hear a lot of complaints. I'm here to talk positive about your building department and your code enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? There is no else. Okay. We'll close the public comment. We'll move on. We did receive a report from the Chief Financial Officer. I just want to, we've never received these reports before, so they're very helpful, just to glance through and see how the revenue's coming in, the expenses, and the percentage of expenses year to date is just very helpful. Administrative reports, Ms. Viveros.
Thank you, Mayor. I have just a few items. I'd like to have the consent of the Township Committee to go ahead and go out to bid for recycling and disposal, recycling collection, and the second one is for marketing of recyclables. So those are two different types of bids. One is currently what we have is with Giordano, one is with Basso. So
So you want authorization?
I want authorization to go ahead and go out to bid for these.
That's Basso and Giordano?
Basso and Giordano currently, yeah.
Can we get a motion to authorize to go out to bids?
So moved.
I think those contracts run through end of January?
I think
No, one is December. Yeah,
the only issue I bring to your attention, just because, and clearly they have to go out, but we have continued to have only one bidder on this issue of recycling collection. And I think Mr. Bell had said that he was taking, I think this came up about 3 or 4 months ago, and he said he was taking some steps to try to get other bidders. We've had our issues with Basso back and forth, but it just concerns me that year after year we get only one bid. And I'm just not sure why that is. It just, we originally were told because of the day of the week we were picking up.
Right.
And then we changed the day of the week we were picking up, but we still only got one bidder. And I just am concerned.
What do you think?
Pardon me?
What do you think?
I think what you think I think.
Said. Okay, so we have a motion made and seconded to go out to bid for recycling collection, recycling marketing. Call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes. Okay, what else you have?
I just wanted to show everyone that we did get a certificate for honorable mention for the public information contest, which next year I'd like to actually get and win this thing, but just wanted to show everybody that.
This was for what?
This is for all the communications that we do, all the marketing, they take into account everything we have on the website or social media, anything like that.
Get us to another level.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
So I just want to ask my colleagues to give feedback to you about the budget hearings. I think they're a welcome addition. It's good to get on the ground floor to have a conversation with them. I think getting us involved is good. It gives some direction to you. It gives some directions to the department heads, answer some questions. So, been very good.
Thank you.
I haven't had one yet, but I'm having one tomorrow.
That's right. Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
That's all I have.
We did give the director of community development an extra ream of paper, though, right? That person was complaining about not having a copier, so we gave her an extra
Right, or making copies upstairs.
Anything else? Mr. Desiderio?
I do not have anything to report to you, Mayor or Commissioner.
Okay, Ms. Fritzen?
I have a report, Mayor.
Yes, but let's keep it short.
Yes, please.
First thing, I just want to thank you all for your participation and assistance at the volunteer appreciation dinner. I think it was a huge success. It gets bigger and bigger every year. So thank you, and I think that everybody appreciated being there. So yesterday, Election Day, congratulations, Ms. Adams and Mr. Lembrick, locally. So as you know, we had a huge turnout in Maplewood. It was really energizing and a lot of fun for a change. And I didn't just sit in my office all day like normal. I was really out there. You're looking at a 60% voter turnout, roughly,
Unbelievable.
which is huge. And, you know, there's a lot of entities that are still out there as far as the votes go. Early voting, vote by mail ballots, the provisional ballots, and they all are going to take days to finally get certification of all elections, but of course the one that we're most concerned with in Maplewood. So again, I can't do that by myself. I have a great team, and I appreciate those of you that notice the work that was done yesterday, so thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next event, Veterans
So
Day.
before we get off voting, just two things. One, we have a request from voters about District 21. We need a second machine.
Okay.
So if
You
you
and
can
I
make that,
spoke, needing a second machine for
that's
sure.
a D-Hart.
No,
That's a D-Hart, and that is the area along the lower east part of Hilton, along the Irvington border. It's just, we had
the
people
pole.
voting there till 8:40 last night
Okay.
because of the line.
I mean, as you know, once you're in the door, 8 o'clock, I mean, you can.
So I understand, but it's
They don't-
really, people are standing in
Right.
line for an hour to vote when
Gotcha.
there's no reason we can have another machine there.
21.
Okay, second thing is, now that we have access to 129 Boyden Avenue, a former first aid squad, where there used to be voting, we ought to look at setting up voting again there. Because it would certainly help D-Hart by moving District 13, which is the Winchester Gardens, Avalon Bay, the condos, move it back over there. There's plenty of parking. It's handicap accessible. We could work all that out. Before we used to vote in the bays, we'd be voting inside this time, not in the bays. But I think it would allow people to walk and make it easier for them than to drive, all the way over to D-Hart. And D-Hart can't handle any more people. I mean, it's really just too much there. So if
I
we could-
agree with you, Mayor,
Okay,
about the first.
so if you could check on
building.
that. And then it might be move 14. 14 is the other district that is right there across the street from the condos. It's a relatively small district. It's Brookwood, Orchard, Meadowbrook. And that's a walking district. They can all walk there. And I think that would help them too, as opposed to have to go over to Clinton School,
I agree.
which also becomes a problem.
With the renovation of the building, I mean, it was a no-brainer. I thought of immediately having at least two districts back there. Yes, I was involved when we had voting in the garage. It was never wonderful.
No.
But, yes, I will
Okay.
certainly look into that.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not finished yet.
Okay.
I want to say something. about
Oh,
the
I'm
voting
sorry.
thing. While we're still on it. So there were some complaints about, well, I know they fixed the machine at the Woodland, but then there's complaints about a poll worker being pretty nasty to people over there. So I don't know.
At the Woodland?
Yeah. And the
Really?
young woman who was working the building, not for the Board of Elections, was very nice and helping me as the gutter. And if you,
Doris is the person.
yeah. Doesn't matter. Well, I mean, it matters, but I can't think of it right now. But the maintenance of the building for when we're opening up for polling, it was pouring rain. The gutter was clogged. There was a waterfall over the door that I ended up locking and putting a sign to go to the next door further it's only like 10 feet away, you know?
Right,
there's
right.
I
two-
know exactly what you're talking about.
But it was ridiculous. I saw two women come in after me and they, turned around to take their umbrella down and then got soaked from.
So that was.
I
a
tried to reach
gutter
the
problem?
Director of Cultural Affairs. He did not return my text or call. Yeah, I know, but I'm saying I'm just saying, we need to make sure, especially when weather's so bad like that, that they're not going through an amusement water ride.
So the other issue there is when we're using a public building, we ought to have a public employee there for
That
these
makes
kinds of
sense.
things.
Right.
Because even when they opened up that second door, the door that you asked people, they didn't open the door up all the way, the lock, and the thing was getting stuck on there. There's also cinder blocks out there to hold up people. It's just so Bush League. Just so Bush League how we prop open doors there and jury rig stuff. I'm so happy we're having the budget meeting Friday morning, because I'm going to go off on this. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Anyway,
that was just,
it was just-
I went over there because I heard complaints and stuff, so, but then when I just felt terrible. There's two older women who just got.
Well, also, it was wet, and so at the Woodland, when I went over there, the cinder block, that was one issue. Also, the floor was slippery.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the
Where's the
rug,
rubber mat?
Yeah.
well, the rubber mat was there, but it was in front of the door that I
Door
locked.
on the lock, exactly. And then everything
So
else
that
on
was
the
no
other
good.
side.
Yeah.
of the-
Oh, it's just.
Yeah.
No, there was one rug there, but it wasn't.
But this is, I know we're talking about voting, but you've all been there when that door's open and the leaves come flying.
Oh,
in
yeah,
because
that's happened to me. Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, anything else, Ms. Fritzen? I know you said you have 10 more things.
Sunday's our Veterans Day program, right in this room. It'll be starting at 2 p.m. sharp. It's a great program. Please think about attending. It's because it's a Sunday, we have a 35-piece band, which is the part of the community band. It's great. If you've been before, the veterans that are here get involved, give their talk about where they served. It'll take 45 minutes of program, and then we have nice sandwiches and desserts for the veterans, families, and any Maplewoodians or guests. We welcome everybody, so
Thank you.
Sunday. I sent today the text of the ABC bid that I think I had neglected to send out the other day. What's going to appear in the newspaper tomorrow and next Thursday. And my final item is on the agenda, most likely for the next meeting on November 20th, is the person-to-person transfer of the O'Reilly's license. So we should be ready to roll on that. I did get the background check. I'm going to send everybody the material. Again, it's been a long time since you even saw the application, because I think that you got that in May. It's just been that long for the records check. So going to schedule that for the next meeting.
Great, thank you. Any questions? There's no more questions, because we'll be here till Veterans Day. Okay.
I like to give a report.
Yes, I know, thank you.
We know.
Yes, we're aware of that. Mr. Daffis?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to congratulate my colleagues, our colleagues, Nancy Adams and Greg Lembrick, on their reelection. Congratulations. I was heartened by the tremendous turnout at the polls yesterday here in Maplewood and across the country. It was a very positive sign. And thank you, Madam Clerk Liz Fritzen, for your amazing work and leadership throughout the day. You know, you were great. We didn't have any problems over on Murrah Church, District 7 and 8, but for, the one machine went out for a hot minute.
That was
Early on, but it was fixed very, very quickly, and we turned no one away. We had a lot of provisionals. I'd be curious to see what the numbers are like there. We also had a very successful senior housing forum last weekend. It was very well attended. And there was a lot of interest in learning about how to age in place, home improvements, home health care, Medicare. affordability, and the only downside was we packed a lot of information into the very first program, and it went very long into the evening. So we will definitely do another forum follow-up very shortly. That's my report.
Thank you. Ms. Adams?
I have, other than thanking the community for their votes and their support, and when do the final counts get in? Now I'm being teased with that I might be in second place.
Don't have an answer.
Oh, man.
Don't have an answer.
No? Okay.
Couple
So-
of days.
I just really appreciate everyone turning out and for your vote and your confidence in me sitting up here and making decisions on your behalf. So thank you, and thanks to my colleagues for your support. Hope you had fun at Menendez party while I was paying the bill.
We did.
Simple.
Yeah, we had a blast. We were right there. All right. Mr. McGehee?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Congratulations, Committeewoman Adams. Well done, bravo, and welcome back. And also, congratulations to our colleague in South Dakota, Mr. Limbrick. And also,
Did he win his race out there?
Perhaps. Yeah. I also just want to take a second and just say thank you to all the people who did run. I think when you run for office, be it Board of Ed or Township Committee or any office, you know, it's a great sacrifice that you and your family take on for months. And you're ridiculed and you're socially persecuted online and many other things. And so it's
great.
Exactly. It's a very stressful time when you're out there exposed. And so for those who put their hat in the ring, you know, I salute you. This Sunday, on the 11th at 9 a.m., we're having the 5K, which is, you know, Pets for Vets. And so please join. My colleagues will all be out there, I think, running or participating as part of our Veterans Day celebration. And also our police department are still collecting coats for the coat drive. The coat drive ends next Friday on the 16th of November. They're getting several coats, but, you know, a few more never hurt. We'll make sure we'll distribute them to deserving youth, deserving adults throughout our community and the community beyond. And that'll be my report for now, Mr. Mayor, so we can get out of here.
Okay, thank you. I too want to add my congratulations to Ms. Adams and Mr. Limbrick. I was talking to somebody at one of the polls, and we're talking about, you know, for us who are elected officials, Election Day is the day.
Yes.
It's the day of the year.
It's very
this is what we work for. We work hard for it. It's like our Super Bowl. It was a very exciting day for a lot of reasons, but that we had close to 60% come out in Maplewood is just amazing. I think it's a testimony to the activists in town who got people out, the level of candidates who engaged people to come out to vote, and just the work of the various parties and stuff here. It was really good. A couple of things. My office hours are Monday night, November 12th, 7 p.m. here at Town Hall. And on Saturday at 10 a.m., we will be dedicating our new electric vehicle charging stations that are at the Woodland. Yes. So if you want to come out, get a real charge, it'll be at 10 a.m.
I will have my electrical vehicle
Yes,
there.
there'll be about 10 or so electric cars there, so people will be able to see them.
First parking spot.
Okay. With that, we need to go into close. So can you do what we have to do, Ms. Fritzen, to make that happen?
For closed, whereas Section 8 of the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Laws 1975, permits exclusion of the public from a meeting in certain circumstances, whereas this public body is the opinion that such circumstances presently exist, now therefore be resolved by the Township Committee, Township of Maplewood, County of Essex, State of New Jersey as follows. Public shall be excluded from the discussion upon the herein specified subject matter. The general nature of the subject matter to be discussed is as follows. Personnel and
Contracts.
to anticipate this time that the above stated subject matter will be made public. This resolution shall take effect immediately.
New motion.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. McGehee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca.
Yes, thank you. We'll see you on November 20th.